Hi guys, this is a new lecture in which we will be discussing high level requirement for performance optimization in Magento 2, and we will be working with the performance optimization in some other lectures, but we will be collecting all the pointers which can be worked. So I have divided them into four parts. First thing is the server level optimization, then the coding level, and then the network level, and then the rest of the other things. So straightforward, let's go to the server level optimization. First thing is the Nginx is the recommended uh, Nginx is recommended for running Magento 2 applications. Some people still uses Apache. I don't know why, but Nginx has really optimized settings for Magento, and there is a lot of support available for Nginx as well in case you face certain problems. And with PHP FPM, Nginx is really very good, so you should use that server stack only. Then opcode caching is one of the most important thing, which nowadays people are starting to use, but for smaller website I know it's a bit cumbersome, but you should consider that, in which what happens is you perform a di compile command in Magento, which creates all the generated file or all the files that will be generated on the runtime, and those generated file and all other files are now available on our directory. Then using opcode caching, whenever the PHP compiler compiles the code, the opcode is cached, so next time when the same request is hit, the overall code is not compiled and the server returns based on the checks from the opcode caching. So it's increased the performance significantly. I've seen like more than 3 times it increases the performance. Then implementation of elastic caching, this is really very important, mostly with the VPN configurations, VPS configurations. And elastic caching is becoming very popular nowadays. You should be using Redis or any other memcache optimized server, and I'll suggest you to keep your Magento's root folder in a separate container. Let's assume that you are using AWS for hosting your Magento application, so you create one AMI for hosting your project root code. You create a separate shared file access or storage access. You create a separate instance for your Redis server, one separate instance for Redis sessions, and one for database in case needed. You either use RDS or compute optimize. So elastic caching should be necessarily used. Simultaneously HTTP2 can be used, which helps to improve performance. It has a built-in multi-threading implemented, where a 5 or 6 requests can go parallelly, and then there are lots of stuff in HTTP2 that can be used. Your server should be compatible to this. And availability in various places, and this is really very important. If you are creating a website, let's say for Europe only, then I think you should be choosing a server that's inside Europe, because your most of your traffic will be from Europe only. So create using a service provider from, let's say, Singapore or US will only increase the time in the network, and the performance is actually disturbed using this. So availability uh, first should be decided based upon the area from where your maximum number of users are coming. And then if you're hosting a multi-country website, then you can use multi-availability zone environments. They are available on both like Google Clouds or AWS or any other cloud service. They are available, so you can use that as well. So that was a server configuration related thing. Nginx with PHP FPM. One more thing, Magento has a white paper for Nginx related stuff. You can find the exact configuration that Magento has used, and they have like given a rough estimation for, let's say, 1000 orders per minute or something similar. They are handling very large amount of add to cart. They say like 10,000 add to cart per 10 seconds or something. And then for elastic caching and code caching or elastic caching, you should be using separate containers, not on your root machines only. That that is really very key pointer, because sometimes that messes around with your file structure. HTTP2 and various other protocols. Okay, then we have the code level changes. So first thing to note is enable flat tables. Magento uses EAV database structure. For, let's say, customer entity, you will be getting a data for a single customer. You will be calling like at least 6 tables in Magento. So it's really very messy, and you will be creating one connection or 6 connections. You will be getting one row of data or multiple rows, or how you're getting the data. If your database structure is EAV, it will be slow. So Magento gives you this functioning where you can just enable the flat catalog or flat tables, and that should work for you. Next thing is to optimize the database indexes and the tables. For example, when you create your flat tables, I recommend you to go to your database and see if for example, listing page or the customer's account page and the home page, the tables that are going to be used on these pages, you can create your own custom index so that the database responses bit faster for these. Or whenever you're going to create a module, apologies, whenever you're going to create a module, you can create your custom indexes as well, so that the data can be retrieved very fast from the database. Next thing is full page caching. Magento provides this feature by default, and they uses a reverse proxy as well, which is Varnish. But they have their file storage based full caching as well. You should keep that enabled. If not, you can find something related to this in store configurations and can enable that. Now Redis implementation is really very easy in Magento. You have to just change couple of bits in env.php. I'll let you know how we can implement Redis, and we'll show you around as well. But this should be implemented. Next thing is the htaccess related changes. I'll not cover all these changes here, but 3 things to note. First thing, you can enable gzip compression from htaccess. The second thing is the htaccess, the static content or file headers, their expiry headers for JS and CSS files. And the third thing is, let's say you have a lock functioning available for a particular IP, or you have any change in Magento that is based on certain condition. If you can find that condition that can be implemented in htaccess, you should use htaccess then. Otherwise, you should implement that in your code. uh, for one example was the IP based conditions, so that condition should be implemented using htaccess. That will give you a high performance rather than based in your code. Next thing is next thing is async grids. In Magento, grids are actually loaded from separate database tables. For example, when you places an order in Magento, it is stored in sales underscore orders table. Now when you check the orders in Magento's backend, the data is loaded from sales underscore orders underscore grid table. So the data goes from sales underscore orders table to sales underscore orders underscore grid using indexes, and this can be done using async approach, so you should enable that from Magento. And next thing is emails via cron jobs, or I should say various things that can be done using cron jobs needs to be implemented in your application. Nowadays developer don't take this seriously, and when you place the order, you are automatically instantly sending the email to client, or if there is a change request from your end client that I need an email when someone is placing an order, I need this additional functioning, you just add the things on top of each other. You don't recognize the use of cron jobs there. If you can think of any functionality that can be done using cron jobs, you should go for that. That will really help you to improve your store's performance, and in future when you will see your code, you will feel more confident and If you don't implement that in future, you may need to implement because your project has gone bigger now. Use of queue is really very important. Again, minify JS and CSS, there is an option in Magento backend. Rearranging assets loading to optimize delivery is for your home page or any browser. You have certain things like CSS loading on top, JS loading on bottom. This saves certain time. Okay, because your first paint on browser is easily loaded, otherwise all the JS are compiled by browser and then this first paint is loaded. So their arrangement should be correct, and you can follow Google's standard. Google Space is standard for that. Scaling images is always a good idea. Critical CSS is maybe new concept for a couple of people, but you can find this word on Google and then understand that whenever a website is loaded, to paint something meaningful, you need some base CSS. For example, you need CSS only for a p tag rather than the class on top of the p tag, just to paint a meaningful thing. Then you can style the rest of the things after that. So the critical CSS that can be used for page loading, you can create the critical CSS and load that on top of the page, and other CSS can be loaded after that, so the first meaningful paint is created very fast. Next thing is code compilation. Magento provides this functioning. You can enable the production mode and the code will be compiled, or you can use di::compile command for code compilation. It will generate all the files that can be generated on the runtime in future. Application mode should always be production on the production websites, and it helps you to avoid various performance glitches. First and most important thing is it just logs the error and don't show the errors to end customer. So if there is a problem on your website, it won't be shown to the customers at least. Next thing is use only needed modules and disable other modules. Okay, so if you are not using the feeds functionality of Magento, you can disable the Magento's core feed module. Okay, and if you have installed 3 modules earlier but you are not using one of them, you can disable that module. So disabling or uninstalling modules will really help you. You should only keep those modules in Magento that are useful for you. uh, Skip runtime file generation. As discussed in the code compilation, you can create all your runtime files simultaneously when you launch the website or from the compilation, so it will save them some time when the files are created on the runtime and then loaded into the browser. Above the fold, content loading and the roles. Okay, so this is really very important because people are people see your website's first look in the first fold only. Okay, so you should create your website in a manner that the first fold can be loaded very fast, and then the other thing can be further loaded. For example, in Magento's mini cart, you see that when the page is loaded, the minicart icon appears, and the items inside that appears using knockout after the page is loaded. So for a customer, it they feel confident and they see that yes, something is loading on my website, because they see only the icon. But the actual meaningful thing for us is the items that we fetched somehow with very complex code are actually loaded after that. So we can hide the complexity from customer and just show them what they want in the first few seconds, and then the other things in our above the fold content can be loaded later. The finest example for which was Magento's minicart. Magento has really done very good work on that. Use service workers. I'll leave this as it is because I'm really not confident with the service worker till now, but they are very useful, and the offline web applications are working with service workers. I have seen Facebook's mobile web using service worker, and couple of other web applications as well. I have done Udacity course. You can go to Udacity course for service workers as well. I think it's freely available. But in Magento, there is a PWA project running on community. I think Vinayak Hoop and couple of other Magento masters are working on that. and they are significantly using service worker inside this, so you can check out that and get the further knowledge from there. Magento PWA, progressive web apps. Okay, next is network level. Okay, first thing to note is always implement a CDN. If your client is not spending money on CDN, use Cloudflare. They provide the free CDN for you. Next is reduce number of requests on server. This really helps and reduces the time over network. And when you send 100 requests and compare the website that are sending 250 requests, your website will be surely fast. Okay, next thing is scatter your subdomain and use cookie less domain. Okay, uh, when you hit any Magento website, your static content CSS and JS are also loaded. So in your Magento you have certain cookies implemented. So when you will load your URL, your cookie will be shipped on the network. But for JS and CSS, the cookies are actually not required. So you can create some subdomains for your JS and CSS files in which your cookie won't travel. So on the network the traffic will be less, so it will be a bit faster for you. Use reverse proxy. Always use reverse proxies. Varnish is really very good implementation with Magento is by default providing that, so you should use that. Reduce chunk size using compression. Okay, so whatever going on your network, you can reduce the chunk size as well. For example, the thing we discussed for subdomain is actually reducing the size of content that is going in the headers for every request. So you should reduce the size of things that are traveling on your network. And multi-threading is one thing where you can scatter or you can push 6 or 5 or more requests parallelly and write your code in a manner that one request output should not affect the other requests also. So this way you will be able to async request on the server, and your website will be a bit faster. Other possible ways are use coding standards. Magento has an extension quality program for this. You can always check your module using EQP. I'll show you how this is done and how you can resolve the errors for using extension quality program. And next thing is you can follow code sniffer, because if your code is really very good and less complex and easy to compile by a PHP compiler, it will be faster. And keep your page structure simple for your website front end. I know sometimes it's not in your hand, but if you keep your website's page structure simple, don't add much complexity into this, your website will be surely faster. And always remember that there is always a place for the optimization. So whatever you have, whatever pointers we have discussed on top, you can search for them. You will find very deep insights for them on various places. But when if you implement all of these, still there will be a option for you to optimize, where you can use browsers database, or you can use something else that has eventually come when you see this lecture. So there is always an option, and you should be prepared to keep optimizing your website as per the current industry standards. Thanks for listening. Bye.